Good afternoon to all my ball knowers out there. This is episode 3 of the Southern Spread with Kurt Kemp. This episode is parlays, predictions, and maybe some Hail Marys in here today. I'm going to start off by saying I had planned on making just one big video for the weekend, Saturday, college football, Sunday, NFL, all in one. I don't want this to be a Harry Potter movie, and I've got a lot to get into for our college football slate, as I'm going to run through all the SEC games, even the cupcake games per se, and I'm going to try to move through those very fast, but we still have 7-8 big games, including some SEC games, so I'll probably have 20 to 24 games to get into a little bit. So with that being said, and then I have quite a few NFL things to get into. So I'm thinking I'm going to try to make this one an hour 15 minutes, just college football, and then have NFL as a separate video for maybe 30-40 minutes for week 1 of NFL. And those will I think I'm going to drop them at the same time. I may drop one before the other, may put the NFL one out tomorrow earlier, just because of the Chiefs and Chargers game this tomorrow night. For any of you that are wanting some plays for that game, and then I'll drop the college football one. I may drop them both at noon tomorrow. Haven't decided yet, but I think that's going to be the play. Is just drop 2 videos at noon and let you guys run it back. I got to get to 50 subscribers first before I'm able to go live with these shows. Once I hit 50, I plan on doing all this stuff live in action, so you can, watch it and see it live and go from there, So if you can, tell your friends, tell your family, tell whoever, just subscribe. Even if you're not watching, hit subscribe so I can start doing live videos, and I'm just trying to grow this into something I think it could be. It is just for fun for me and for the viewers. I think it's just a good thing to do, but I'm just chatting over here. So let's get into Saturday college football, the rundown. I'm going to run through these SEC cupcake games, give you a couple things I'd like to see from each team this weekend, even in cupcake games, and then I'll get into I think it's about 8 big games that are coming this weekend. We'll see. I got about 6 pages worth of notes to go through. So let's get started. 11 a.m. Saturday morning, San Jose State at Texas. Texas favored by 36.5 at home. The 3 things that I would like to see from Texas for this weekend is Arch Manning, struggled a little bit at Ohio State, but Ohio State is a top 3 defense in the country. Maybe not 2, maybe not 3. They have the best player in the country on defense, so that was part of the issue on Saturday. Also, Arch Manning has not played a ton of college football. Let's just be real right there. Yes, he has the Manning last name, but he has not played a ton. If he was as good as his uncle, Peyton, or his other uncle, even Eli, I believe he would have been playing last year over Quinn Ewers at Texas. I do think Arch Manning is a really good quarterback. I think he's just got to get accustomed to playing college football, and I think that starts this weekend with San Jose State, because he will be able to get comfortable in a game that is not a huge game and make easy throws and be able to attack a defense and actually, see another defense, essentially. One that's not as prepared as Ohio State, or they may be as prepared, but not as good. They don't have the dudes like Ohio State does. So I think this is a good stepping stone for Arch Manning this weekend. The second thing for this Texas team is I need Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore to take a lot of the pressure off Arch. Make it easy for him. Find those holes, find those gaps, sit down in them. Show your hands to Arch, catch the balls that he throws to you. There was a couple drops and one iffy drop. It was a little behind him. It hit his hands. I thought he should have caught it, but it was still behind him. So it's just one of those things. But I think those 2 guys have to help relieve a lot of the pressure off Arch, because Arch has all this hype around him and stuff. But those guys are the way to let Arch take that next step. The next thing for me is that defense stay consistent. Yes, they have dudes at every level on that defense. Yes, they are a very good defense. They are also a top 3 to 5 defense. They may be top 3. They may not be 2 or 3. We don't know. But yeah, just stay consistent with that defense week to week. With that spread being 36.5, I have Texas covering this weekend with a score of 52-10 is my score prediction. And that's kind of what I'll do. You know, I'll list the game. I'll tell you the spread, give you a couple things I like, what I dislike, what I want to see, and then I'll give you cover, not cover, and I'll give you a score prediction even. You know, some of the scores might not even be close, but this is what I think is going to happen. So, moving on, 11:45 a.m. Central Standard Time, and all these times I list are Central Standard Time. So if you are Eastern, if you are Mountain, if you are Pacific, view these times as Central Standard Time. So 11:45 Central Standard Time, Utah State at Texas A&M, home of the 12th man. Don't really foresee it being a 12th man on Saturday as they are playing Utah State. A couple things from A&M I want to see this weekend is can Marcel Reed be consistent on a week-to-week basis? You know, we saw a little inconsistency with him this past season. Yes, he is a very good quarterback. Yes, he's very good on his legs. But can his passing game be more consistent? You know, he was 22 of 36, maybe 22 of 38, something like that on this past Saturday. That's not a terrible game for Marcel Reed. You know, you would like it to be that 25 of 36 or 25 of 38. But can he do that on a week-to-week basis? That's what I would like to see. He's got a bunch of weapons around him now. Just letting your big-time playmaker receivers make plays. You know, Mario Craver, 8 catches, 122 yards this past week. A couple touchdowns, maybe 1 or 2. I can't remember exactly because Casey Concepcion either had 1 or 2 as well. And those guys are just unbelievable on the outside, clearly. We've all seen them before, and I think you just got to keep letting those guys make plays. Just get it around them, you know, get the ball in their hands, let them make the plays. Yak's huge for those two guys, and I think they're very good yak receivers, yak yards after the catch. The last thing for A&M, which is I harped on it a ton Monday, you got 3 guys in the backfield plus the quarterback's legs. You cannot. I don't know how much I'm going to have to stress this year, and I hope it changes this weekend so I can quit talking about it already because it's already annoying. You cannot have these 3 guys plus a quarterback and not have a guy over 40 yards rushing. Yes, they're in and out, but 40, 80, and then you have maybe 120 yards rushing this past weekend. Le'Veon Moss is coming off injury, I understand, and that will change once he's back fully healthy. I think he is a very good back. He is the guy this game I foresee getting going in the run game, and I think they have to get the run game going early and often, especially before you get into SEC play, because you got to run the football in the SEC. You can't just let Marcel Reed drop back and throw the ball 40 times a game. That's never going to work. I don't care if you're playing Kentucky, Mississippi State. I mean, it'll work against Utah State, yes, don't get me wrong. But once you get in the SEC and those bottom quadrant teams, it's not going to work even against them. You know, they've got to get that rushing attack going. A&M spread is minus 31.5. I have them covering at 41-6 on Saturday morning. I'm going to skip down to a couple 2:30 games. Maybe 3 2:30 games. No. Okay. We got 2 2:30 games. Well, we have 3, but I'm going to talk about 2 of them right now that are both against FCS opponents. So there's no line listed I haven't seen, and I expect both of these teams to win by at least 40 this weekend. You know, Austin Peay at Georgia at 2:30, ETSU at Tennessee at 2:30. Obviously going to always spend a little more time on the Vols, as you can tell by my hat. So let's get into this Georgia game first. I think the big thing for this is just more reps for Gunnar Stockton. Yes, he played a half of a football last year in a big game, but he still hadn't seen a big-time away game like he's going to see next week in Neyland Stadium. But these reps will still be good for him. Just playing more college football. You know, I think those are some things that always help a college quarterback. Just actually playing football. Reading defenses. Getting more accustomed to offenses. Being able to audible, just talking to your O lineman. And having a cohesive unit with the receivers, and tight ends, as I'm about to mention in a second. So I think that's good for Gunnar Stockton. We will see how he fares in a big-time atmosphere next week, as we haven't seen that before, because the game he played was in the Mercedes-Benz Dome, and that's basically a home game for Georgia. So we will see how he fares in a crazy atmosphere next weekend, and my whole next week will probably be talking about that game, because that's just going to be a huge game for both sides. They both have very new quarterbacks and never have played. I think it'll be easier for Joey Aguilar to get accustomed, as it'll be at home. But we'll get into that more this coming week. The second thing for Georgia for this week is the Branch brothers poised for big years, it seems, as the defensive player of the Branch brothers led the team in tackles, and he does fly around the ball a lot and is a very good tackler. He's a solid safety, ball hawk, but loves to fly around the ball. So anytime you see a red, black, or white jersey, he is probably involved, if it is a tackle for the Georgia defense, somewhere. The last thing for Georgia is 3 stud tight ends. You have Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky. They were both there last year. And they have freshman 5-star Elias Williams this season. I don't know how much Elias Williams will play. He was a freshman 5-star, and he's very, very good in the pass-catching game. But he is a freshman. So I know they played Marshall last week 45-7, so I know he got a bunch of PT, and he's going to get a bunch of PT again this week. But the thing for that is, I don't know. We'll actually find out that tight end room rotation next week when they come to Knoxville. Oscar Delp is the guy in that room, obviously. Lawson Lucky is a very good pass catcher, and they're all very good pass catchers. That's just what Georgia does, load up on pass-catching tight ends and kill everybody with it. And I'll get into more in a second of why I'm talking about these tight ends. No line listed, so Georgia rolls, obviously. Austin Peay is, they're not a bad FCS program. They beat the brakes off Middle Tennessee State this past week. So they're not terrible, but they're not SEC caliber. They would get the doors blown off by Mississippi State, who I think is the worst team in the SEC. At Kentucky, then Kentucky'd probably even beat Austin Peay. No shade to Kentucky. If anybody knows me, that know I dislike Kentucky very much. All sports. The next 2:30 game is ETSU at Tennessee, 2:30. I'm gonna spend a little more time about this. Joey Aguilar in his first start in Neyland Stadium. I foresee this first drive may get a first down, may go 4 and out. He's gonna be hyped up. His adrenaline's gonna be rushing. He's never seen 103,000 people in a stadium, and it's going to be 103,000 in a stadium for ETSU. So his first drive might be a little rocky, but I foresee those screen high balls I was talking about Monday continuing for that first drive until he gets settled down a little bit, and those adrenaline rushes, calm down just a little. But I do think he will be perfectly fine. And that'll give him a good chance to, play in that atmosphere. Not a big game, but play in an atmosphere that's going to be crazy. It's going to be rowdy. That way, next week, he's ready to go. And maybe those feelings won't be as high on next week, which will help a ton. Because I think the more calm, collected, cool quarterback next week could possibly win the football game. But we will see. The second thing for the Vols is 3-headed monster, in the backfield. Deshaun Bishop, Peyton Lewis, Star Thomas, each 8+ carries, all averaged over 4.5 carries on last Saturday. No one guy in that backfield room puts himself above the other. They're all about team. If you've heard any of them talk about why they are the way they are, it's always team first, team first, team first. If one guy succeeds, then everybody succeeds. Is their motto is pretty much that in itself. As I heard Deshaun Bishop talking about the other day, is he's just like, I've never put myself above the team. Obviously, each of them probably would love to be a bell cow running back and get 15, 20 carries a game. It's just not the game of college football in today. So I love that the three guys want the other guy to do just as well. You know, they all want to go 10 carries, 100 yards every game, and they have the talent, and they are able to do that. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do that this Saturday. The one thing from that backfield is I wish, just for me personally, because I think he's the best of the three backs, is I wish Peyton Lewis would have a little bit more involvement. And that's okay if he doesn't in some of these games. You know, they're not, you know, there may be a game Bishop gets 12, 15 carries, Dar Thomas gets 12, 15 carries, Peyton Lewis gets 12, 15 carries. But I really like Peyton Lewis a lot. His size, his speed, his ball carrier vision, all the things. He has all the tools to be a very, very good college running back. And I mean, he was a track star in high school who's put on to weigh almost 220 now. So he's a 4'3", 4'4" fringe guy that weighs 225. You know, it's like just crazy to think about. But I like all those guys, and I think they're a big part of this offense. Big thing for me this week is I do believe this hasn't been confirmed nor denied, so I'm not sure, and I haven't seen any updates on it, but I do foresee that right tackle position on Saturday being filled by freshman 5-star number 1 overall tackle in the country from this last year's class, David Sanders. Be his first game action, you know, and I think that's a huge thing. I think especially to get him in against East Tennessee State, I do believe he needs to get this playing time, especially because he is going to be on that right side all year long when he's healthy, and he is going to have to do his job, and that job will begin next week against Georgia in a big-time fashion. He's going to have to be a monster over there, and I do think he will be. I prefer him on the left side because he's a little quicker, so I would like to have him protecting Aguilar's backside paws, but he is a freshman, and he's got a lot to learn, and he's got to get some gameplay in him. So we will see. In updates on that, I may update you guys if he's playing or not. But Heupel did say last week he expected him to play this week. He was out last week, expected him to play this week. So we will see if he plays, if he's on the field, and I hope he is, because I would love to see what he does in live action game. Excuse me. Now on to the defense for Tennessee. Big things for me from this past week against Syracuse were the linebackers that we have: Arian Carter, leader of the defense; Jeremiah Thielander, solid linebacker; and Edwin Spillman, young guy but very, very good and very active. All those guys will fly around the ball, very good filling holes, paws, very good at attacking, you know, the ball, or seeing ball, go get ball, making tackles. If they get their hands on you, you know, you're usually on the turf. They're going to make the tackles, and that's just the type of linebackers they are. The one thing I need better, and this is where those 3 tight ends from Georgia come in, as it happened on Saturday. Again, I need pass coverage better from these linebackers, for one. It just simply has to be better. You know, they're very good in run. They're very good in making tackles. They're very good at filling the holes and finding the ball and calling defenses, communicating. They're very good at all those things. But their one big thing is pass coverage. You know, they gave up a bunch of mesh routes, a bunch of crossers, a bunch of slants, and that's just been a forte, you know, the past few years is those linebackers. It's not even just these guys, even past guys. It's those short routes, they're just there, you know, and that's how team, you know, I think Syracuse had 6, 7 20-yard balls on Saturday, and that wasn't from deep balls. You know, the corners were outstanding. It was from crossers and yards after catch is all that was, and it was a bunch of those little things. And that has to get cleaned up before next week, and this is a good game to get that cleaned up, before those 3 tight ends come into town. Those 3 tight ends are the reason we lost in Athens last year. That game was won at halftime, and we didn't change anything about the defense at halftime last year in Athens, and those tight ends just destroyed us in the second half as they did in the second quarter. That game was won, but not to harp on that. We'll get into more about that next week. But I need to see better pass coverage from these backers on Saturday afternoon. New Look secondary with the perceived starters before this year, Jermod McCoy and Ricky Gibson III, were the 2 outside corners for this year. They're both injured. I expect McCoy to be back next week against Georgia, not in a full capacity though. I do think against Georgia he will be playing sparsely, and it'll probably be just random third down pass downs that he needs to lock somebody down. He's a top 5 corner in the country. For me, he's the best corner in the country, but that's a little biased to me. And he's top 5. I don't care who you are. But so I think we'll see him in that capacity against Georgia, and then, just continue to grow the snaps from there. But as of now, your starting secondary for the Vols are Colton Hood, cornerback 1, transfer from Colorado, who had a really good game Saturday, and I expect that to continue. He's a very athletic, very good corner, and I'm glad he came to Tennessee, as he will be cornerback 1, and he's not going to be able to be kept off the field when those guys come back. That's all I'm saying. And then freshman Ty Redmond, the big thing for him this week is just more ball. That's how it is with these freshmen, more live action ball, and that's what they need. He played really well against Syracuse. I hope he plays really good at East Tennessee. But it's no Georgia, so just getting him more ball before the Dogs come to town is huge, especially in a starting role. He was probably the top graded corner of Tennessee this past week. I think that was Jalen McMurray actually, but yeah. So just getting him more snaps, more ball, and I'm sure there'll be a couple of other guys that get some playing time on Saturday as well that I'm not talking about, and hopefully those guys that show that they can play too, because we're gonna need each and every 85 ball player team on the roster for the Dogs the next week. Jalen McMurray in the star nickel position. Like I said Monday on our episode, he is my breakout star this year. He has all the tools to be a very good cornerback in the SEC, and I do believe he will showcase that this year, and it'll be well deserved whatever he gets. Another guy only played, I think, 28 snaps on Saturday. I think he was still doing some disciplinary issues. Boo Carter, I think Heupel had him playing on a snap count because of some disciplinary action from the summer or into the summer camp. I foresee him playing probably double that snap, about 50 snaps this week. And I think when Georgia comes into town, he will be on a full snap count and will be in that back end of that defense. I do think he moves back to safety with a little corner action. I think he's athletic enough to where he can play anywhere on that back side of that defense. He can play safety, he can play nickel, he can play outside corner. He's just that good. He's just an athlete, and you want him on the field. Yes, he's probably going to give up some big plays every now and then, but he's going to make big plays at the same time. So I do foresee Boo Carter back a little bit, and the last 2 guys playing safety for now would be Andre Turrentine and Edris Farouk. It's just more games for Farouk, which is big. Just like talking about Ty Redmond. He hadn't played a lot of ball. Played a little bit last year, not a ton. But I foresee him playing a lot more on Saturday and getting some game under him. And then Turrentine's just the leader of that secondary currently, as he is the veteran of the group and has probably played the most ball. So, he's not going to wow you. He's not going to have that wow factor. But he's going to do things really well and really smart and have a high football IQ. I do think Tennessee rolls, of course. And let's skip over that. Yeah. 4 p.m. Arkansas State at Arkansas. Arkansas just needs to let Taylon Green be Taylon Green, and you will be just fine Saturday. My only question for Arkansas is, can Omega Blake be the guy for Taylon Green? I do believe so. He was very solid, but let's see how consistent he is on a week-to-week basis. And week 2 will be a good indication of what that looks like. Getting into SEC play, two-headed monster in the backfield. Mike Washington's your Sonic to the Braylon Russell's boom. So Arkansas spread is favored by 22.5 points. They cover and win 38-14 on Saturday against Arkansas State. Moving on to some night games in the SEC. South Carolina State at South Carolina, 6 p.m. I want to see more consistency from Lenore Sellers. He carried the ball 13 times on Sunday afternoon for 25 yards. That's not Lenore Sellers-esque. He's usually breaking some big ones. I didn't see much of that on Sunday. I would like to see, probably not. I probably wouldn't like to see more of it this weekend. I don't think he needs to run a ton against South Carolina State. He just needs to do what he needs to do to get out of there with a win, and it's going to be in blowout fashion, of course, but just get an extra game and get some reps in. This is a game probably for him to bolster his Heisman campaign, that type of deal. Consistency from Oscar Attaway III is what I would like to see. I expect him to have 15 to 20 carries this weekend. Maybe not that many because they'll probably want to play some other guys as well. But I want to see that 5-6 yards per carry stick. Big thing for South Carolina for me is I need more Michael Smith. That tight end is just a stud. Get him the rock, let him make plays. He can make a play. Big boy who can do it all as a tight end. South Carolina rolls. 6:30 night game in Death Valley. La Tech at LSU. 3 things for this game. Is LSU's O-line really that good? Yes, it's Louisiana Tech. But if you're going to be that good as you were against Clemson last week, you have to do it on a week-to-week basis consistently, And that's what O-lines are supposed to do. And they had a really good week against Clemson. Can they do it in week 2? And then will they be able to do it in week 3? Will they be able to put these games together, and do it from week to week? Week 1 to week 5, or is it going to be a thing where it's like, yes, they're really good in week 1. Yes, they're really good in week 2. Oh, they're really, really bad in week 3 and week 4. I don't know. We will see. And that's just one of those things that I'll be on the lookout for this weekend in that one. Not sure what La Tech has, to be honest, but if they were able to get to Nussmeier a few times, and that O-line clearly isn't going to be a consistent factor this year for the Tigers. Even though it is La Tech, that place will be rocking. The Cajuns will start at 9 a.m. and that stadium will be crazy for a night game. Just let Garrett Nussmeier be Garrett Nussmeier. He is, to me, and I've said this the past couple of years, he will be the best pro quarterback out of this class that's coming out. I do firmly believe that, and I believe that last year as well. So just let Nuss be Nuss. He's very good, very, very good quarterback. And you got 2 very good playmakers in Aaron Anderson and Berrien Brown on the outside. Sorry about that. On the outside, playing receiver. So let those guys make plays for you. LSU is 37.5 point favorite. I have them covering 55-16. Let's see that defense, Let's see that LSU defense continue what they had last week, only giving up 10 points. Let's see if they can do it again. It's just La Tech. It's just La Tech. Let's do it again. Let's get that defense back to where they used to have it. Ball State at Auburn, 6:30 on the Plains. Big things for this game is, can Jackson Arnold be consistent? That is the question, and that is the question I will have all year with this Auburn team. How consistent can he be? Because who's in waiting right behind him is Deuce Knight. And I just think if there's any slip up of whatever from Jackson Arnold, for if it's a 2-game stretch straight, he's going to the bench. So we'll see how consistent he is. We didn't see it last year. Let's see if we can see it this year. Will that rushing attack hold up? Damari Austin and Jeremiah Cobb, and Jackson Arnold, but all three 16 carries for almost 250 last week against Baylor, which is insane stat. And I do not think that will be the case going forward. I don't think they'll do that. I mean, this rushing attack can be really, really good. Jeremiah Cobb's a very good running back. Damari Austin's a very, very good running back. And Jackson Arnold is very good on his feet. But once you get into SEC play, I don't think you'll be able to run the ball 48 times a game with three dudes and win consistently. I mean, it'll work against some teams, but then there's other teams you're going to have to put the ball in the air. You're going to have to put the ball in there. You can't have 11. You can't go 11 for 17 for 110 yards in the air in the SEC, especially when you have two top 5 SEC wide receivers who probably combined for 5 catches total of those 11. Eric Singleton Jr. and Cam Coleman have to be more involved in this game plan. They have to. They have to get them early and often. Yes, it's Ball State, but this is a chance for Jackson Arnold to go through the air to these two guys that all they're going to do is elevate your game to another level, because they are that good. We saw Eric Singleton Jr. go crazy at Georgia Tech last year. Probably the most sought after wide receiver transfer in the country. Him and Casey Concepcion from A&M. But so you got to get these guys involved, and I want to see more of that. Auburn's a 43.5 point favorite. I have this game in red because I'm not sure, just because that number's so high. I label them green, red, and blue. Green is go, they're covering at ease. Blue is iffy. They might, I think they will. Red is I'm caught in the middle. So let's go. Auburn covers 52-3 this weekend, and I will say they get the passing attack and the rushing attack going at the same time. Last two of, we got one more so-called cupcake, and then we got a decent game that I have labeled as the not big game of the week, even though I think it is a huge game. 6:45, we got UL Monroe at Bama, and I had started this video earlier and it got cut off, and I was in a rant about the coaching of Alabama. I've heard some talk, I don't know how true it is, I've seen some stuff, about the culture, about the coaching staff of Alabama. Not sure exactly what's true of that and what to make of that. I will say this about Kalen DeBoer and the coaching staff is nobody will ever be Nick Saban, and that job when it opened up was probably the toughest job in college football to take, and it's the toughest job in college football to hold. I say that just because you're going after the GOAT. It's Nick Saban. It's a guy who, he very rarely lost a game. I think he lost 4 games to unranked teams in his career at Alabama, or I forget that stat that they had 4 games in the last 15 or 16 years. That's with Saban, and DeBoer's already lost 4. That's just one of those things, though, that I had said this to a lot of people when DeBoer got hired, Bama fans in particular, that if you go back 20 years, a lot of these people who were Bama fans don't remember, the Shula days, the days like that where Bama wasn't even making bowl games. They were winning 4 games, 5 games. They were fighting for bowl games. They were scratching and clawing for bowl games, and that's just a thing, though. It's like he's not Nick Saban, so I think the expectations need to be for Alabama for the foreseeable future need to come down just a tad bit, because he's not Nick Saban. Yes, they have dudes all over the field. Yes, they are a very good team. Yes, they are a very good college football program in totality. But what makes these kids dudes is coaching and being coachable and able to listen to criticism and take that criticism and apply it to the next game and win the next game. And Nick Saban had a very, I guess, weird way of making that happen every single year. So I will say this: he is not Nick Saban, and I think we should. I don't know, but that's just one of those things that I think people need to grow accustomed to. Is nobody will ever be Nick Saban, and you're not going to find another Nick Saban. It's just ever. That's basically like taking that job and trying to do that job the way Nick Saban did. I compare it to two things, and that is taking the Patriots quarterback job after Tom Brady. He's the GOAT. It's the toughest position to play in college football or play in football in general, and taking that after a GOAT, then obviously that's probably why Mac Jones is a backup somewhere right now. The other one I compare it to is everything back to Tennessee is the Tennessee Lady Vols basketball team after Pat Summitt. In shambles. You couldn't find. I mean, every coach they had, the past two coaches they've had before, Kelly Harper and Holly Warlick, they did okay. They weren't great, but it's because they're not Pat Summitt. So that ought to be said. This is nobody's Nick Saban, and everything's a little different now without him for Bama. But to this game, anyways. Sorry about that rant. Ty Simpson, this will be a very good opportunity for Ty Simpson to work on what he needs to work on. He does not need to be throwing the ball 40 times a game. That needs to come down to about 30, and it needs to start with short, easy passes. And I do hope, well, I'm trying to be unbiased. So I do hope that UL Monroe gets a little pressure on him. That way he gets out of the pocket a little bit and can run around and fix those errant throws that he's out of the pocket running around. He can't, if it comes to SEC games again and he's spiking those balls or overthrowing those balls that he's out of the pocket, especially against good teams. You play South Carolina this year, you play Tennessee this year. Both of those teams, those defensive lines on both those teams, they got dogs, and they're going to get after the quarterback. So that's something they need to fix fast. And one of those things that will help that is getting Ryan Williams involved. And I do believe that he needs to be the intricate part of this offense on Saturday. I think he needs to have double-digit catches and get him going and get that guy happy and back to what he is. Big thing for Bama, again, is Jam Miller is still out with an injury. But news is he could return as early as next week for the Wisconsin game. And I think that's a huge deal for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Bama is favored 37.5 points. I do have them covering at 49-10, and Ty Simpson getting more comfortable playing football. All right, my not-so-big game of the week is 3:15 Saturday afternoon. It's my most interesting not-big game of the week. The University of South Florida, at the University of Florida, you could tell this past week DJ Lagway didn't practice a ton in the offseason, which is okay. He'll get there. He'll get back, and I think DJ Lagway is a very, very good quarterback. Has a very good deep ball. Can move a little bit. Is kind of injury prone, but when he's healthy, he's very good. So I need more from Lagway this week, as he's just playing more football, and he's basically got to get in a groove this week, because I think next week is. I do want to say next week for them is LSU. I'm not 100% certain, but I think that's the case. And if so, he's got to get in a groove this week and do it fast. He's got people all over the field. He's got tons of playmakers at the receiver position. Vernell Brown, Eugene Wilson III, Tank Hawkins, who can fly. There's another freshman, Dallas Wilson. Yeah, I think he's going to be really, really good, and I think he needs to get a lot of PT this week to get him some ball under him. I don't know if he played much last week is the thing. and I don't know if he's hurt or what, but I think he needs to get some PT this week. Second thing for them is, for me, is who is Jaden Ball's complement? Like I said earlier, being a bell cow running back is not the way college football has turned now. So who is that complement? Is it Jacoby Jackson? Is it Duke Clark? Is it KD Daniels? We don't know. We shall see this weekend. Heard a lot about KD Daniels from my best friend and my brother-in-law, who are big Florida fans. You know, they think he's going to be very, very good running back. So we will see. And I'd like to see him get some touches this week. But I do think Jaden Ball might be the best running back in the SEC. Just my personal opinion. I don't know what to do with this game. I have Saturday night I said 45-27 Florida, and the line came out at 18.5. So that would put it right at 18. And this is not me saying I think South Florida will win. I do not think South Florida will win, but I do think their offense is good enough to put up points on Florida because of their quarterback. Byron Brown is a very good veteran college quarterback who can run a little bit. He was injured last year, and they have playmakers outside. And, you know, the offense of Golesh is a little different. You know, it's kind of like Heupel's offense. It's, you know, gimmick offense, as they say, but it works. So if it works, who cares? It's not supposed to be NFL offense. It's made for college football and to score points, and that's what that is. So I do think they will score some points. How many? I'm not sure, but I do really like Byron Brown a lot. And the line had moved at 1 point in favor of South Florida since it opened. So right now it holds at Florida 17.5. Been going back and forth, but this is spur of the moment right now. I have like 3 different things written down here. I'm going South Florida covers, but loses 38-27. Changed my mind. I think South Florida does 27. I don't think Florida scores 30 or 40 in the 40s. So let's go 38-27. Florida wins by 11. South Florida covers. So that's my most interesting, not big game of the week. Now we are at 42 minutes. I will try to get the rest of this done in 30 minutes. That way it's about an hour and 15 minutes. That way it's not like a freaking movie nowadays. It's just kind of like a movie from the 90s, an hour long, hour 15 minutes long. So let's get going into these big games. Big noon kickoff, which I hate, by the way. I hate big noon kickoff. I think it's terrible. But more power to you, Fox. Iowa at Iowa State at 11 a.m. Rocco Beck just continues to get better. He is a very good quarterback. I said it last year. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks in college football. Not wearing orange. I just think he's a very good college quarterback, and he continues to showcase that as he has in their first. I think they're 2-0 already. I think they played 2 games in their first 2 games. Iowa State also has a 3-headed backfield monster in Carson Hansen, freshman Dylan Lee, and Abu Sama III, which is my favorite back of the 3. I don't think Dylan Lee will play a ton. I think he played a lot last week because they were up big. Not for sure, but he's going to be a really good back. So he may spell a little bit, but it's more so Carson Hansen and Abu Sama III, and I really like Abu Sama III. Overall, and you usually hear this from the Iowa side, it's switched this year. Iowa State has one of the best tight end rooms in the country. They have 2 guys that are just really, really good, and it's Rocco Beck's favorite targets. You know, Rocco, he has a receiver he likes to hit, but these 2 tight ends are usually his go-to. So we'll see how they fare against Iowa as well in that defense. Iowa's still pretty much the same offense, 3-to-1 run-to-pass ratio. They do have a new quarterback, though, Mark Gronkowski, by way of South Dakota State, I believe. And he's a very good quarterback. He can throw the ball. He can sling it around a little bit. So I'd really like for them to utilize that a little more in this game. But we'll see if Iowa is Iowa or if they have a little hitch in their game this weekend, because they're going to need it, as I have Iowa State covering the 3.5, 27-20 this week. Another game, 11 a.m., and I think this game might be one of the best games of the day. Illinois at Duke. This is a QB matchup. Which quarterback will play better, and that team will win? Which quarterback makes less mistakes, and that team will win? Luke Altmaier for Illinois and Darian Mensah for Duke, two dark horse Heisman candidates. These guys, they could go crazy and win the Heisman, but they could also, make a couple mistakes here and there. I've seen it from them the past couple of years. But I do think whichever QB plays better and limits turnovers, that team will win this game. These teams are very, very similar in that they don't have tons of playmakers and skill positions on the offensive side of the ball. At running back, at receiver, at tight end. They have solid college players, nothing crazy. They don't have anybody who's going to wow you. They don't have anybody who's going to win a Biletnikoff Award. They don't have anybody who's going to win a Doak Walker Award, those types of guys. But they have guys who will make plays and are very good for these teams, I think. So with that being said, Illinois is favored by 3.5 at Duke. I have Duke covering this game, but I have Luke Altmaier making one more play or one less mistake than Darian Mensah, and Illinois getting out of Durham with a W in 30-27 fashion. So let's move on. We got a couple SEC games, big SEC games to talk about. 1, 2. We got 4 big SEC games to talk about. I'm sure y'all know which ones these are. And then we'll finish with one big game. It's also an SEC game, and my upset of the week. Ole Miss at Kentucky at 2:30. For Kentucky to have any chance of being relatively close in this game, Zach Calzada cannot play the way he played last week against Toledo. It was Toledo, and he went 10 for 23, maybe 85 yards. He can't do that. That's not going to cut it in an SEC game. So I need more from him. I understand that you lost probably a couple of your best targets. You still have Jamori Macklin, who, he's always killed Tennessee, but who I think is a really good receiver. I just don't think Zach Calzada is that great. But he has to be better in this game for them to have a chance to win this game. However, Kentucky always gives Ole Miss fits. They always give Ole Miss fits. They always give Florida fits. So we'll see if that fit can make them fit again, because they did it last year. For Ole Miss, Austin Simmons on the other side, he may throw for 400 yards, but we can't have 2 interceptions. He threw 2 picks against Georgia State. You throw 2 picks against Kentucky, you're letting Kentucky stay in this ballgame, even if Calzada is 10 for 23. So that's one of the things I would like to see him clean that up, the turnovers, because Austin Simmons is a really, really good quarterback, and I do have big hopes for him to be really good. Maybe not. He'll be I think he's solid this year. I think next year he will be really, really good. But he'll do what he needs to do for Ole Miss this year. He'll fit Lane Kiffin's offense well. Big things for both sides of this ball is, can Kawan Lacey and Logan Diggs be consistent in the Ole Miss backfield, as well as can Dante Dowdle and Seth McGowan be consistent in the Cats backfield? I think both of these teams have 2 really good running backs who can help this team out a ton and take a little pressure off of the quarterbacks, because Austin Simmons has to limit turnovers and Calzada has to complete more passes, essentially. So I think these backs can really help relieve some of that pressure off in this first SEC matchup for both squads. Ole Miss is 10.5-point favorite. I have them covering 31-20 Saturday afternoon. The next one, Kansas at Missouri. I've got a lot on this one, I think. 2:30 Saturday afternoon. Is Bo Perbula as good as we saw week one? They played Central Arkansas. He had a heck of a game passing, had a heck of a game on the ground. He will have a chance to make that statement in this rivalry game that we have not seen in a long time. So I'm intrigued to see how Bo Perbula plays in this one. I don't think he goes 25 or 28 again. That's just insane. But I do think he has a solid game. Ahmad Hardy is the other running back in the SEC that I like outside of Jaden Ball and obviously my Tennessee backs. I think Ahmad Hardy, I think he was the most sought-after running back in the country, or one of them. He's very, very good. He's going to do his thing, and he's vital in this Mizzou offense. So get him going early, take a little pressure off of Perbula in a rivalry matchup, and we'll see how that goes. On to the playmakers. Is Marquise Johnson a breakout star for the Mizzou Tigers? I think the last couple years he's had kind of similar statistics. I think he's had about 200, 300 yards each of the last 2 years. Can he break out and double or even triple that mark as he came out of week one, 5 catches, 134 yards? Let's see if that continues on into this game. Big one for me, Kevin Coleman Jr., who is on his 4th school in 4 years. Jackson State, Louisville, Mississippi State, and now Missouri. He has gotten better every single year. I will say that. He has last year almost 1,000-yard receiver for Mississippi State, and he is very, very good. So let's see if he can continue his involvement in this offense and keep getting better. I think the question mark for this game in Missouri is, can Mizzou slow down Jalen Daniels, who looks back and healthy? We will see. I think Jalen Daniels has a big game, but it's Missouri 6.5, favored by 6.5 at home. I have Missouri not covering this game, but I have them winning 27-23 Tigers on Saturday. I just do not think that Kansas has the defense to hold up. Let's get into this. This is a game I can't wait to watch these two 6:30 games. These three 6:30 games. I'm gonna have to turn on 3 TVs. I think all 3 of them are gonna be incredible games. So to start with, we got Vandy at Virginia Tech, 6:30 night game. Will be insane in Blacksburg. That stadium will be rocking. It's one of the big time stadiums in college football. Can't wait to see that atmosphere. And so here's my takes for this game: is can Diego Pavia continue his success from last week? I'm not sure. They didn't play a good team last week. He was really, really good, and Eli Stowers was very involved in the game plan last week, but I would like to see him double the catches, I guess, at 4 to 8. Is that too much to ask? I think 8 catches for Eli Stowers against Virginia Tech would be a very good game, and I think that would help a ton. So let's say that. Yeah, I'll say that. I would like to see Eli Stowers even more involved than he already was last week, and I think that'll just help Diego Pavia continue his successes from last week. However, if Kyron Drones, quarterback for Virginia Tech, can clean up things he did wrong against South Carolina, which South Carolina's defensive line was after him all game. So he had a rough go of things Sunday afternoon. If he can clean some of that up against his Vandy defense, I think this game is a very, very good game, and I think it comes down to the wire. I've always liked Kyron Drones. Virginia Tech did not run the ball well against South Carolina. I don't know if they had 40 rushing yards, to be honest with you. I think they may have been like 20 carries for 40 yards or something. They did not. They have to get that run game going on Saturday to beat Vanderbilt. If they double down on that this week, Vandy will handle business in Blacksburg. I do believe that. But another thing I do believe is that they do get this run game going, and they are favored by 1.5, and they do cover this game, and Virginia Tech does win and beat Vanderbilt 24-20 as it comes down to the wire. Another big game that I'm not sure of, to be honest with you, Arizona State at Mississippi State. So it's probably one of the most interesting matchups of the week to me, because this game, it really should not be close. Arizona State should blow out Mississippi State. But if they play like they did in week 1, Mississippi State will be in this ballgame and have a chance to win. Jordan Tyson, don't get me wrong, he went absolutely nuclear last week, and Sam Leavitt was decent. He didn't play great. He didn't play bad. He was just decent. It's not Sam Leavitt that, we saw last year for most of the part. And that might be in case of losing somebody like Cam Scatterbo, who did a ton for that Arizona State team last year. But, Sam Leavitt has to find more pass catchers than just Jordan Tyson. Yes, he is one of the best wide receivers in the country, and I do believe that. But what he did last week won't sustain the whole year. If Leavitt completed 15 passes last week, 11 of them were to Jordan Tyson. That's not exact. I have to go back and look, but I think at least half of the completions were to Jordan Tyson, or more than half. So I do think they need to find a wide receiver 2 complement to Jordan Tyson. Yes, he can do it, but I don't see that as a sustainable thing to win by for this year for the Sun Devils. Can Blake Shapen make throws he needs to make to keep Mississippi State in this game? Like I said, Kevin Coleman transferred to Missouri, which was his best receiver last year, so he's going to have to make these plays, because I do think the run game will be really good for Mississippi State in this game. They have 2 very good backs in Devon Booth and Fluff Bothwell. So I do think those guys get going, and they have a solid rushing attack. But for them to be in the game, Shapen will have to make a couple throws, and I think he's got to hit a couple deep balls to even win the game. So Arizona State is favored 6.5 at Mississippi State, and I do have them covering this game and winning 38-30 is what I have. 38-30. So I do have it kind of a close game, essentially one score, but Arizona State still covering. All right, let's get to game day. What is college game day this week? It is in Norman, Oklahoma, for the matchup of number 15 Michigan Wolverines and the number 18 Oklahoma Sooners at 6:30 Saturday night on ABC. I really think we learn a ton about both of these teams in this game. And there are a few things that I'm looking at for both teams to just know just how good or not good these teams are. And we'll start with the visiting team in Michigan, and that is Bryce Underwood the Truth. Decent week 1, will need to be better this week to win this football game in Norman. He's hasn't played his first college football game was last week, and he was okay. But if he does that again this week, I think Oklahoma handles this game. So I think he's got to create a couple more explosive plays this week. to win this football game. Second thing for Michigan is Justice Haynes finally a 3-down back coming from Alabama. And can he stay consistent in what he did last week? I don't know. He had a very, very good week against New Mexico. I think 126 yards on 20 carries or something like that. So very, very good week. I do not think he does that this week. But can he be consistent in, averaging 4 or 5 yards a carry? I think that's really where it will lie on how he does and how consistent he is. So that's the other thing for Michigan. So let's see how both of those guys attack this week in Norman and see what they look like. And I think that's going to be the kind of the key factors of how good is Michigan this year is those two guys, because I mean the one rap on Michigan always is the offense. Their defense is usually very, very solid. And I think that's probably going to hold true this year as well. I don't know. They gave up 17 points to New Mexico. So that's another thing we'll be able to kind of see is how good that Michigan defense is. So we will see on that side of the ball as well. Now on to the home team, Oklahoma. How good is John Mateer? I harped on this on Monday a little bit. I don't know exactly how good he is. Coming from Wazoo, they didn't. He was really good at Wazoo last year, but he didn't much play a ton of really good teams. So is this his first game against a really good team? I can't remember, to be honest with you. I'd have to go back and check, but I think it might be. And so is the hype for real? I think we're about to find out on Saturday night. Another thing is listed as third on the opening depth chart for week 1. I think he was a little banged up in the offseason, but where the heck is Jaden Ott? One of the most sought-after running back transfers in the country. He's an explosive player out of Cal. And where was he at? I think he had 1 carry last week. I do believe I read where Brent Venables said that he will be a lot more involved in the game plan this week. And I don't know, but I was very curious when I saw that as to why he was not playing, and then I saw where he was listed as third on the depth chart, and I thought that was very, very odd. But I do think this week he's a full go as something I've been reading, so expect to see a lot of Jaden Ott this weekend for the Sooners. Excuse me. So the line currently sits at Oklahoma favored by 5.5. Bryce Underwood's first big test. I don't think John Mateer is as good as advertised, but I do think he is still very, very good. So I have Oklahoma covering and winning this game 31-24 by touchdown in Norman. So, last part of this, let's get to it. My upset of the week. And you're probably sitting here wondering, what game could be left for me to pick as an upset? I'm still very high on this team this year. They lost last week, but I'm still pretty high on this team. I think they have one of the better quarterbacks in the country. But at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, Saturday morning, I do have the Baylor Bears upsetting the SMU Mustangs on Saturday morning. SMU is favored by 2.5, and I have Baylor covering and winning 34-31 by way of Sawyer Robertson. I think Sawyer Robertson is very, very good, and I was genuinely hoping he was going to enter the transfer portal to be Tennessee's quarterback this offseason. That did not happen, but I do think Sawyer Robertson, and he is my Heisman dark horse winner this year. I don't think he wins the Heisman, but if a dark horse did win, I think it would be Sawyer Robertson. I think he's just a stud. I have him as a very good NFL quarterback as well. I have him graded really well behind probably top 5. I have him obviously behind Nussmeier, behind Aller, those guys, but I have him right there in the mix. Big thing for Baylor is they have to get the run game going. They did not run the ball well at all versus Auburn last week, so that has to be a thing early and often in this game is getting the rushing attack going just to help Sawyer Robertson, open up a ton. Sawyer Robertson still threw for 400-plus yards last week, and if he's throwing for 450 this week, I think it's in blowout fashion. But I do think that the run game can only help Sawyer Robertson this week. As well as on the other side of the ball for Baylor, that defense has to be better in the run game this week. I mean, you gave up 250-plus yards to 3 guys and Auburn last week, and that just has to be better, has to be cleaned up this week in practice. That's something that SMU is very good at, running the football. Kevin Jennings and Chris Johnson Jr. and a couple other running backs on that team that are solid backs that can run the rock pretty much. So that defense has to be better in the run game, in the run department this weekend. And if they give up 150 yards, I think Baylor wins. If they give up 200, it's close, but I may call it Baylor win. For SMU, Kevin Jennings' consistency, he was very good last year, and I think he's a very good quarterback. Let's see how consistent he can be in this game, as I do think this is a really big game for both squads, because I think this game will do one of two things for each squad. I think if Baylor wins, it sets them on the track to get to where I think they were going to be, and I had them winning the Big 12 this year, and I think this just puts that in perspective and knows that there's a path to get there. If they lose, does it deter them going 0-2 to start the season, and it just drives a hole in everything and ruins all shred of confidence in the Bears, and they just deteriorate for the rest of the season. I guess same goes for SMU. I mean, I know it's like I said the other day, there's 3 teams in the ACC and maybe SMU. I think this game is a solid game to learn what SMU is this year. They're very different from last year. Not very different from last year, but I don't think they're as good as last year. I don't think they're as good as Clemson. I don't think they're as good as Miami, and I don't think they're as good as even Florida State right now. I'm not even high on Florida State. I think that was they just played a really good game and had a good game plan against Bama. But I have them as like 3rd, 4th, 5th in the ACC this year. So let's see if they win this game. I think that may persuade my mind a little bit on just how good they are. But I don't see them making a playoff run again this season. So we will see. Kevin Jennings, he's solid. Chris Johnson, second part of this is Chris Johnson Jr. looked solid in their game the other day. Yes, that is CJ2K's son. And they look exactly the same. But yeah, he looked decent, and I think he's going to be the back for them this year. I think he's the guy in the backfield. They run 3 or 4 guys in and out, but I think he's the good one. And then, is this a good team? I don't know. I think this will tell a lot. So that is it for parlays, predictions, and Hail Marys. Hope you take these plays. I hope you make some money, and hope you like what you heard. And if you did, like, subscribe, share to your friends. Like I said, I need 50 subscribers before I can go live with these shows, which I'm really hoping to get to here soon. And that is my Saturday rundown. So good luck to all you ball knowers this weekend. Hope you win some money, and thank you for joining me on the Southern Spread.